Tyler, it's good to see you, my friend. Before we get into it, how's life? How's life over there?
Yeah, no, everything is good. Obviously, with football being back, it brings some life back to the team, the city itself, the fans, everybody. Playing in an empty stadium is not ideal, of course, but it's better than nothing. So everything's returning back to normal at a good pace now. So hopefully everything continues to progress.
What was the most difficult part of the quarantine for you?
I mean, for me, it was just the boredom of staying at home. Of course, when you move to Europe and you're playing football, you move here for the football, right? So when you can't do anything and you're stuck inside your apartment, obviously the boredom catches up to you. So for me, obviously, spending most of my time at the training ground, finding ways to get better. When you're not able to do that, it gets a little bit boring with the home workouts.
How many days did you train as a team, Tyler? Because I've heard so many different answers from so many different clubs over in Germany. It seems like it was pretty inconsistent.
Yeah, it was. So as a full team, I want to say we trained only for 9 or 10 days.
Okay.
Before. So they announced, I think, like midweek, maybe we trained for 5 days, and then they said the league will start next week. And then everyone had to kind of prepare on the fly. So I know some teams that had guys that tested positive. It was a little bit trickier. They couldn't train with the team right away. But I know that I think everybody had the same amount of time for the most part.
So 2 matches in, how good is it playing?
Yeah, it's a great feeling. I mean, obviously from a team perspective, we had a tricky result against Freiburg at home, and then obviously a good result against Mainz. But the results are going to come. Obviously, like you said, we haven't had that much time to train as a team, so we're kind of trying to find our chemistry again as quickly as we can, and then continue to pick up points, because for the most part, the top 4 is still up for grabs. So we want to continue to obviously move our way up the table.
I mean, Tyler, from my perspective, watching over here in the United States, it almost seemed like, you guys had a belief that you can still make a run at winning this thing. And that first game against Freiburg, it just seemed like it was a flat-footed performance. Fair?
Yeah, 100%. Flat-footed performance was the most accurate thing, probably. We came out with the mentality that we had a good game plan. Obviously, things started to change. We changed our formation at halftime with a different idea of how to break down that deep block. But Freiburg is one of those teams in the league that you almost think they have your number. They beat us earlier in the season. You come back home with the idea, okay, we're going to get 3 points, and it's just one of those games, man. They sit on the 18-yard box, hard to break down. We had our chances, didn't finish them. And you look back on it, and it's those games that you look back on and you're like, those are 6 points we should have this season. But obviously we didn't.
Yep, and I think that's what a lot of soccer fans over here, we don't totally understand that because of how MLS is set up. But it's you look at it and say, well, we got a point. But truth be told, if you're going to make a run at Bayern Munich, you've got to get 3 points out of that. Tyler, I've been asked numerous amount of times over the last 10 days on SportsCenter and all of our other shows here at ESPN, what's it like playing with no fans in the stands? You know what? You're doing it. You answer the question.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? Because you have so much energy going into the game because you're like, football's back, let's do it. And then you walk out and there's not even like a walkout, when they're calling your name and you look around and everyone just kind of takes the field and you can't, high five guys on the other team that you're friends with, that kind of thing. The vibe is a little bit off, to be fair. But it's one of those things where you have to dig deep and really try to grind out the results because, to run the extra 15 yards without the fans cheering for you is definitely difficult sometimes. Those are who you play for. Those are the people you play for, and they kind of give you the extra motivation. So in a sense, it feels like preseason games with no fans, of course, test matches. Sometimes the games have that vibe where both teams have equal chances, even though both teams may not be equal, sort of like the Freiburg game. But yeah, it's a weird vibe in the stadium, the echoes, the communication, everything. But
even just look at it, Tyler. The first 2 weekends of the Bundesliga return, you look at the home teams; they've all struggled, right? So it's obviously playing a huge factor. What are your thoughts on pumping in fake noise into the stands for you guys as players? Would that change it?
Nah, for me, it doesn't really make a difference, right? You see the fans, you see the energy jumping up and down when the ball goes out for a throw and a goal kick, a shot is saved. I don't think you can really replicate that.
Yeah, I'll stay in my lane back here in the United States and move on to the next question. Timo Werner, how good is he?
Yeah, guy's an absolute baller. That's all I can say, man. He's lethal. I mean, the guy scores goals for fun. He can do it in numerous ways. I mean, he's just continuously proving it in consistency every single year now.
what was your first thing you noticed when you showed up at Leipzig? And I've asked Jesse Marsh this, your former coach at the Red Bulls, and obviously he was over there. But what was the first thing where you were like, oh, wow, I'm here?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously everything being in German, right? You walk into a training camp and you don't really understand.
Tyler, I was hoping you were going to say the moment I had bratwurst or schnitzel or something like that.
Oh.
That's when I realized I was like, I'm not in St. Louis anymore. I don't know where I am.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, there's so many differences to obviously being in New York and playing with Red Bulls, of course. The banter aspect of it, there's not as much banter. It's more of a walk-in, straightforward mentality, do your job on the day and walk out. I mean, I do miss that, to be fair, where you can mess around before training and after training. You take care of your business on the field. Here, it's more of a job, man. You just come in and you do your job and you leave. So I noticed that for sure right away.
Yeah, that's the one thing I noticed. And you're young, too. I was 19, Tyler. You're young, and that catches you because the Americans, we're used to, okay, the whistle blows, fine. But afterwards, we're okay throwing some icy hot in some underwear or putting stuff in cars. Like, there's no real joking around. That's a huge cultural difference. I want to stay now with the United States because on the outside, Tyler, all of us talk about this lack of identity with the U.S. men's national team. And yet when you really think about it, all the identities of the past were based on the World Cup success. 94 or the failures, 98, 02 or 06. Do you think that it's an unfair discussion for those of us on the outside to try to identify the United States men's national team right now?
Yeah, 100%. I think everybody knew what we were getting into after we didn't qualify for the World Cup. It was going to be a rebuilding process. It still is a process, right? You have a lot of young players coming in with obviously Gregg, who's trying to continue to build our identity now. And, it's so funny from being on the inside and obviously playing with that team because, people talk about, we want an identity. We want an identity. Well, Gregg's coming in. He's trying to put an identity onto the team. He's continuously sticking his foot into the process and saying, this is the way we're going to play. But then people get mad when the results don't come right away. So you have to pick your battle. You have to say, okay, do we want an identity and have to go through the struggles of building an identity and what it takes? Or do we not want an identity? Maybe the results come or they don't. So I think that for me as a player and being coached by obviously Gregg, who's coming in with an identity and giving trust to a lot of young players to play big roles, for me it's a great opportunity, right? Because obviously I want to be a leader in the group, continue to develop in different ways. But we do have an identity now. Now it's about continuously moving this thing along and making sure we progress each and every day.
Yeah, Tyler, I think that's very well said. What's your best position? I know what I think, but what's your best position in your mind?
6. I mean, when I play the 6, for me, it's where I'm able to do what I'm best at. You go onto the field and you feel not almost free in a sense. It's natural. Everything's natural. When I play, obviously right back, right wing back, I'm definitely capable of playing there. I can have success there, I believe. But I think there's obviously still little things where, you go into a game and you're like, yeah, this hinders me a little bit. I'm not able to counter press and win the ball back as quickly as I want to. When you're stuck and you have a line to your back and you have to try to figure out, okay, now am I a 1v1 player, 1v1 defending, all these little things where you can't take as much risk. That's obviously something that I think about a lot. But I mean, wherever I'm playing on the field, I don't care. I just got to go out there.
No, I know that. You'll run through a wall if it means winning the game. I do believe at the 6, your natural tendencies come through. However, I do remember that CONCACAF Champions League against Chivas, if I'm not mistaken, where you played right wing back and completely dominated the first half. And that's why I think we always have these conversations on the outside. Tyler, I think it's extremely odd that the U.S. men's national team next game together could be a World Cup qualifier. Is that odd or no?
Oh man, it's unbelievably odd. For me, it's even more odd, right? Because I haven't played with the national team in a year. So now as I mentally prepare for it, I have to really, prepare myself that the next time I put on the US jersey, it's all or nothing. Like there's no more preparation matches. It's either, you go out there and win or we're not going to another World Cup. So I think for a lot of guys, it's going to be different because you might see guys get called into a qualifier that have never been into camp before, but you just have to find a way to get your best players on the field. So it'll be interesting.
Tyler, I've always appreciated your perspective on many things. Before I let you go, I always know you're trying to improve. So what's the one thing you're trying to improve on right now?
Yeah, I think that for me, it's been a tricky season, right? So I think that, mentally, this is the first time where there's been curveballs thrown at me for the most part. It hasn't just been a consistent, easy year. So I think, taking it game by game, knowing that I haven't really been able to establish myself under a new manager. It's a first for me of, sometimes being in the lineup necessarily, sometimes maybe not being in the lineup. So it's just about consistency, going into training, obviously continuing to prove that whatever position I'm put in, I'm one of the best 11. So the mentality just has to stay strong.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.